standing still? Like you're living the same routine on repeat while a better, sharper, more capable version of you is trapped underneath layers of distraction, fear, and old habits. If you've ever wondered why it feels so hard to change even when you desperately want to, this video will give you the answer. Today, you're going to learn a complete 6 to 12-month blueprint to rebuild your identity. Rewire your habits, redesign your environment, regain mental clarity, and step into a version of yourself that feels aligned, powerful, and unstoppable. This is not motivation. This is reconstruction. And if you're ready to let go of who you've been and step into who you were meant to become, let's begin. Reinvention sounds dramatic, but the truth is simple. Human beings are built to evolve. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on what you repeatedly think, feel, and do. The problem is not that people are incapable of change. The problem is that they are unconsciously reinforcing the identity they no longer want. Most people try to change their lives using willpower alone. They push themselves for a few days, maybe a few weeks, but eventually old habits resurface. Not because they're weak, but because they never replace the systems and beliefs that built their old life. Reinvention is not about forcing yourself into a new version for a short burst of time. It is about designing a different internal world so that new behavior feels natural. Reinvention becomes possible the moment you understand that your life is simply the result of your patterns. If you change the patterns, the inputs, the outputs must change. And in the next sections, you will learn exactly how to do that. Clarity, the foundation of all transformation. Clarity is the most important step in reinvention, because without clarity, all effort becomes directionless. You cannot change what you cannot define. Many people stay stuck not because they lack discipline, but because they lack a clear destination. When the mind doesn't know where it's going, it drifts into confusion, distraction, and internal chaos. To create clarity, you must define 3 things. 1. Who you are right now. Not the version of you that you hope you are, but the version you actually live as. What habits shape your days? What beliefs shape your decisions? What patterns keep repeating? To who you want to become. Your future self should not be a fantasy. It should be a clearly defined identity with values, behaviors, and standards. 3. Why this reinvention matters. A weak why leads to weak behavior. A powerful why acts as fuel on the days when motivation disappears. Clarity isn't just visualization, it's alignment. When you say, "This is who I am becoming," your actions must begin to reflect that identity long before you see results. Reinvention begins the moment clarity is established. ANTI vision, the tool most people ignore. While having a vision is powerful, there is something equally important. The anti-vision, the version of your life you absolutely want to avoid. The brain responds strongly to danger and discomfort. When you clearly define the future you fear, your system becomes more alert, more decisive, and more motivated to move in the opposite direction. Your anti-vision might include waking up every day feeling tired and unfulfilled, staying stuck in cycles of procrastination or distraction, being surrounded by relationships that drain you, being financially limited, feeling disconnected from your potential. This is not about negativity, it's about awareness. When you can see both sides of your future, the mind gains clarity and urgency. You stop drifting and start choosing. The difference between pleasure and enjoyment. One of the biggest obstacles in reinvention is the modern dopamine trap. It's easy to get stuck in cycles of instant gratification from entertainment, food, social media, and endless stimulation. Pleasure is cheap, fast, and addictive, but it never builds anything meaningful. Enjoyment, on the other hand, is what comes from challenge, growth, and intentional effort. It's the satisfaction you feel after finishing a workout, completing a project, learning a skill, or committing to something meaningful. Pleasure drains your energy. Enjoyment expands it. Reinvention requires rewiring your dopamine sources, choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term escape. When your brain begins to associate reward with growth rather than distraction, Your life becomes noticeably easier to navigate. Restructuring your identity. Identity drives behavior. If you see yourself as inconsistent, you will act inconsistently. If you see yourself as disciplined, you will behave like a disciplined person. Reinvention requires shifting identity at its roots. You don't wait until you are successful to behave like your future self. You become successful because you begin behaving like that person now. Identity construction includes the standards you refuse to break, the habits you repeat daily, the routines you show up for, the beliefs you reinforce. Ask yourself, what identity would naturally produce the life I want? Then begin embodying that identity immediately before the evidence shows up. Building mental order. A chaotic mind cannot build a structured life. Mental order is the ability to think clearly, manage thoughts, and act intentionally instead of emotionally. The world today constantly pulls your attention apart: notifications, distractions, opinions, noise, endless content. If you do not protect your attention, life will feel overwhelming. To create mental order, practice reflection and journaling to organize thoughts. Spend short periods in silence to understand your inner world. Remove unnecessary digital clutter. Limit the amount of random information you consume. Build daily routines that reduce decision fatigue. Mental order is not about perfection, it's about reducing noise. The quieter your mind becomes, the easier it is to build the life you want. To redesign your environment, remove triggers that lead to old habits. Make productive actions easy and accessible. Surround yourself with people who reflect the identity you want. Limit spaces that drain your energy. Create physical and digital environments that support focus. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your environment. Change your environment, and your identity automatically begins to shift. Strengthen your confidence. Increase your independence. Improve your career. Enhance your creativity. Expand your self-worth. Skill building is one of the most accelerated ways to reinvent yourself because it provides evidence of growth. Evidence strengthens belief. Belief strengthens identity. And identity strengthens behavior. Momentum. How to create progress that doesn't stop. Momentum is more powerful than motivation. You don't need perfect discipline, you need small wins that accumulate. Reinvention is a compounding process. Each small action builds the psychological momentum necessary to take bigger actions. To create momentum, start so small you cannot fail. Track your progress visually. Celebrate wins, not perfection. Build streaks of consistency. Use systems instead of motivation. Once momentum begins, the journey feels lighter. The version of you that once felt impossible suddenly feels natural. The emotional side of reinvention. Transformation is not just intellectual, it is emotional. Reinvention requires letting go of old versions of yourself, old habits, old fears, and sometimes old relationships. You must be willing to experience discomfort, uncertainty, and temporary instability. But emotional discomfort is not a sign that you're failing. It is a sign that you're growing. Growth requires facing your fears, allowing yourself to be a beginner, confronting limiting beliefs, detaching from validation, choosing long-term meaning over temporary comfort. You must be willing to outgrow people, environments, and versions of yourself that can't follow you into your future. The 6 to 12-month reinvention roadmap. Here is a simplified blueprint you can follow. Month 1 to 2, clarity and mental order. Journal, simplify your environment, reduce distractions. Define your vision and anti-vision. Month 3 to 4, identity and habit reconstruction. Begin acting like your future self, build foundational habits, create routines. Month 5 to 6, skill building. Learn skills that elevate your value, confidence, and opportunities. Month 7 to 9, environmental mastery. Change your surroundings, reduce negative influences, build supportive relationships. Month 10 to 12, momentum and expansion. Refine systems, expand goals, solidify your new identity. Reinvention is not instant, but it is inevitable if you commit to this timeline. Reinvention is not about becoming someone else. It is about removing everything that has prevented you from becoming yourself. In the next 6 to 12 months, you can reshape your identity, your habits, your environment, your skills, and your destiny. The version of you that feels out of reach is not impossible, it is simply unpracticed. You don't need permission. You don't need motivation. You need clarity, consistency, and courage. Your future self is waiting. Start today.